Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So, we are going to be talking about betrayal and specifically referencing Judas. And I know this is going to be probably a very tender message for people because I don't think anyone is really immune from the experience of betrayal. And also at times, that could also be a question mark we have about ourselves. Did I betray this person? Perhaps you did commit betrayal as well. So I think this is a kind of a full circle subject. So we're going to pray and then we're going to jump right in. Lord, thank you so much for the opportunity to share your word. And you know the place that our heart is upon listening to this message. And I ask that you would bring healing to the hearers, that if they've been hurt in this area, that you would bring your peace and your healing in there. And for those who maybe have committed it, I pray that you would help them to reconcile and restore that which was taken or lost if they can. And I also ask that if people are unclear whether they've committed it, or maybe even they question your motives at times, that you would give us all ears to hear and eyes to see. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so let's start with defining betrayal because sometimes something can be conflated with something else. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I'm looking at the KJV dictionary and I am reading, if the link will be in the description, so you can check it there. So, number one, to deliver into the hands of an enemy by treachery or fraud in violation of trust, as an officer betrayed the city. To violate by fraud or unfaithfulness, as to betray a trust. To violate confidence by disclosing a secret or that which was entrusted, to expose, followed by the person or the thing, as my friend betrayed me or betrayed the secret. To disclose, to permit, to appear what is intended to be kept secret or what prudence would conceal. To mislead or expose to inconvenience not foreseen, as great confidence betrays a man into errors. To show, to discover, to indicate what was not obvious at first view or otherwise be concealed. To fail, to deceive. Okay, so ultimately, when we're thinking about the term betrayal, is that there is a relationship, there is confidence, there is trust, and that is being broken. And not just in the sense of maybe personal injury or harm, but like it is being betrayed. Something is being provided to an alternative party. Something is happening in terms of being misled in terms of intentions or motives or words or like outcomes. So betrayal at its core betrays the relationship and the trust that is established, and not from the standpoint of I want to be clear, like this is not about integrity. This is from the standpoint of like a relationship and fellowship with the person in a way that would cause harm. So why I'm being very clear to distinguish this too, because some people can look at betrayal incorrectly. So for example, one of the things that I would say as a social worker to a person is that like we have complete confidence and there is no chance that I'm going to disclose this information to anyone else unless it's not in these circumstances. If you are going to harm a child or you're going to harm yourself, then I will betray said confidence. And if I'm legally subpoenaed. Okay, so I want to be very clear in saying this is that not everything that is information is provided to an alternative party is a form of betrayal. Okay, so what is the intention behind it? So the reason I'm pointing to that as an example, right, is because you do have, complete confidence with a healthcare provider unless there's a risk of life and the safety of a child and unless they're forced by court to do so. So as Christians, there are reasons why someone might do something that opposes what you say or do. Okay? So it doesn't mean that's necessarily betrayal. So for example, if you disclose something to a person in a leadership position and they come back to you and they want you to do specific things in order to address like the area you've disclosed, like let's say for example, you disclose sin and then they're like, oh, okay, we think this would be like helpful to remedy that. This is not a betrayal of confidence. This is them trying to support you ultimately, right? And ensure that you have what you need. And I say this like carefully because sometimes, leaders get it wrong. So it's not to say that like in every circumstance with a leader, they're always doing what is right. I've been betrayed by leadership. I know what that feels like. But I do also want to state that just because they're maybe trying to find a way to support you doesn't necessarily equate that with betrayal. Okay. So kind of scenario one, right? Another way that sometimes people can misunderstand relationship, or they might think, oh, if someone disagrees with them, then this is like a form of betrayal. This is not a form of betrayal, right? What you could say is problematic is if the person is not comfortable disclosing it to you and privately does it. This would be a like more likely to kind of align itself in the form of like gossip potentially, and could be a betrayal of trust if like information was disclosed and shared, etc. Right? Or even if it's just really like it could be scenario based too, but sometimes it is with the intention to like harm the person's reputation, but sometimes that's not the indicative or the reason behind it. So I'm trying to like kind of tease it out a little bit that when we're talking about betrayal, I'm not saying that just because someone disagrees with you, just because somebody does something you don't like, just because maybe you experience hurt in the relationship, that doesn't automatically equate with betrayal. It can maybe provoke those feelings, but not necessarily the case. And that's why when we're thinking about Mark 14 and we're thinking about Judas betraying Jesus, we see that he is betrayed for a sum of money. And that sum of money is specifically with the intention to put Jesus into the hands of the Jewish leaders, the Roman soldiers, that ultimately that he would be crucified, right? So he is, and that is why when Jesus makes that statement about him following that, where he says, for the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born. So that is Mark 14, verse 21. So again, to be clear, is that he is being handed into the hands of ultimately the Jewish leaders, the Roman soldiers, and ultimately it is for the intention to crucify him, right? So that he would, even though as an innocent man, that his life is being asked of him this time. I want to be very careful because like the Lord does not, his life was not taken, he gave it. But that is what they also had intended to try to do as well, right? So there's like this mutual process where you see like this betrayal, and then you see also God's providence and his sovereignty, that he is, all things are working together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. Is you're seeing that really even the evil that is being intended is still working together for good, right? But there is still it's a very clear statement that he makes as well, right? Which is that there was still evil that was taking place in that betrayal. And so if you're in a position of leadership, or if that's the kind of the place that you're directing to go, this is inevitable. This is an inevitable part of leadership. You will be betrayed. That is part of it. Now, why is that the case? Why is it that betrayal is ultimately part of the Christian experience, particularly those who are entrusted with much? Well, for number one, to whom much is given, much is required. So if we are following the example of Jesus, that means we're going to suffer like he did as well, right? And in said leadership position, you are entrusted with different people. You're entrusted with sheep. You're entrusted with goats. Wheat, tares. So there is the dual category that a leadership entrusted person is dealing with, which is you are able to see the fruit of an individual, but you do not know their salvation. And that is why the example of the wheat and the tares is such a very illustrative point, being the fact that the tares look very much like the wheat. I have to repeat that. The tares look very much like the wheat, but they grow together, right? And so you're not sorting in a church. You're not sorting when you're working amongst people. You've got people who are in both categories, likely most of the time. You're not always dealing with believers. Sometimes you are dealing with false brethren. So in the case of that, if you're going to be thinking about what does betrayal look like, right? Is that may in fact happen. Is that a person who you are, caring for and tending for might cause harm, will cause harm at some point, right? Yeah, if like I can even say just professionally, the things that have happened to me by the hands of the people I serve have been very significant. Like even to the point of someone trying to take my life. So I will say wholeheartedly, when you serve people, when you work with people, you're going to find yourself in different circumstances in which you're dealing with different types of people. And you don't exclude, oh, I'm going to only help this one. I'm only going to help that one. It's like, no, you help all people. And at the end of the day, it is not your determination if this person knows the Lord or doesn't. So there is the risk. There's the risk that a person doesn't know the Lord. And by virtue of that, there is no semblance of loyalty that exists within that individual to a person in a leadership position, that they can walk with you, follow you, much like Judas did, and at the end of the day, turn around and do something to betray confidence or relationship, or and to really undermine what has been given in the relationship. And then on the opposite side, you could actually be dealing with sheep, and sometimes sheep are going to act in a particular way. It does happen. Just because someone's a sheep doesn't mean they're perfect, right? So that does mean that there may be times where a person can betray your confidence or betray relationship with you, and they might still actually know the Lord. Now, if we look at the example with Peter, you see that, for example, like Jesus foreshadows that all of the sheep will scatter, but that specifically Peter, one of the ones that is the closest to him, that he says that he is someone who will deny him 3 times. And if we really stop and think about this circumstance, like, this is not me imposing what the Lord felt, but as human beings, they both can feel kind of similar. They both can really sting, right? Because regardless, in both cases, Judas and Peter both have relationship with Jesus. Now, the Lord knew that Judas would betray him. And so it was not a surprise to him, and yet he still called him and discipled him. And I will say it's very challenging sometimes when you know the person is ill-intended. And I will say I've had both situations. I have had situations where the Lord gave me discernment the entire time that something was wrong with this individual and to just be careful. So I've had that scenario, and still the betrayal was extremely painful. And then also on the other side, I've seen it where the Lord, I don't want to say he didn't give me indication of the person's character, but I didn't know how they would respond towards me. And that was very surprising as well, right? And very painful too, right? Because at the end of the day, relationship is really a very integral part of our walk, right? And so to go back to the text is that we see that even in spite of what Judas did, we still see that the Lord walks through the process of being actually taken into custody by the soldiers. And so when we see that Jesus is actually betrayed with a kiss, I'm going to put the text up so we can see it, but you see that interaction as well, and who Jesus continues to maintain himself to be even in the face of this circumstance. So this is Mark 14, verse 43. And immediately while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "This one I will kiss is the man. Seize him and lead him away under guard." And when he came, he went up to him at once and said, "Rabbi," and he kissed him. And they laid hands on him and seized him. But one of those who stood by drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. And Jesus said to them, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And they all left him and fled. So we do know ultimately the man who struck the high priest is Peter, and we do see that in the account of John. But at the end of the day, Jesus still does not retaliate in that moment, and he still walks through the process as he committed to in the Garden of Gethsemane. And what was spoken before the foundation of the earth is that he was slain before the foundation of the earth. So we know that from the very beginning, Jesus was going to lay down his life, and he was intent on doing that as such because he loves us so much, and he laid his life down for all of us. And it's such good news that he has done this for us. But even in the face of such painful actions from the people around him, including the ones who walked very closely with him, he still did not allow that to impact how he showed up. And ultimately, this is the calling of the believer, as painful as that is. And I say this on both sides. I say this from the side of I understand how painful it is, and I also understand it on the other side, like in terms of just the devastation it causes. So I've seen both sides of the reaction. I've been livid, like straight, I'll cut this person. And I've been on the other side of been like, okay, like I actually just need to walk away right now, and I'm just going to let this go and trust the Lord with it. And I'm not saying it's easy, right? This is no way am I saying this is an easy process or this is something that is like, oh, it feels great when it's happening. Nope. No, it does not feel great. But what do we know from the Lord's words prior to all of this happening? We know that in Matthew 5, he said, verse 10, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So the calling of the believer is actually not to always be treated well. You're actually often treated quite badly, in all honesty. But here's one thing that I will say, and maybe you might relate to this. I thought it would be easier if it was false. Like I felt like it would be easier if what they were saying was false, and it's actually not easier. It's not easier at all. Neither is actually easy. And the thing is it's never just that the person is betraying you or betraying confidence or reviling you or saying things. And there's always a shred of truth to it, which is what makes it really difficult to deal with. Or sometimes it's something that is so left field that it's like there's no way to prove it. So you're just kind of stuck with like whatever has been said, and like the instinct, right, is to defend, to respond, to contend and fight with what is happening. But at the end of the day, that's not what we're called to do as believers. In Luke 6, verse 26, "Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you, And from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. Okay. And that one line always gets me. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. When Jesus demonstrates that when he is reviled, that he did not revile back, and that even when they accused him, he didn't say anything back, I am slowly understanding the wisdom of that. Because truthfully, no matter how much you try to defend yourself, it doesn't change things. It doesn't make things better. You can try to over explain, you can try to make things right with people, and at the end of the day, we're in a spiritual war and things happen between people. I do also want to say, like, I just want to really emphatically say this so that your brain doesn't go in this direction. I'm not saying that because someone betrays you, they are not a Christian. I am not saying that because someone betrays you, they are demon possessed. I'm not saying those things either. People are people. Sometimes people do bad things, right? And if we know anything about sin, we know that that actually is kind of the pull, is that we don't always do the right thing. So the point is not to, like, after something like this happens, to be like, what? I am the better Christian, and nope, please don't do that. Please do not do that, because at the end of the day, that makes you no better than them. The point is not to think more highly of yourself than you ought to think, to be sober-minded. The fact is we have failed the Lord on so many accounts in so many different ways. And if you feel like you haven't failed him yet, just wait. Just wait, wait, because anytime you think that you are in a good place spiritually, I promise you, he'll remind you how crappy you are, because you'll be in the right situation where your flesh will jump and you'll be like, oh shoot, I didn't even know that was still there. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm not saying he's intentionally tempting us. That's not what I'm saying. God doesn't tempt man with sin. But I'm saying that you will be in that scenario where he will remind you, like, you need him so deeply. I don't care how Christian you are. I don't care how saved you are. I don't care what your title is. I don't care what your education is. You need to be on your knees, like, every single day, seeking the Lord and continuing to meditate on his word day and night, because trust me, we are all fallible. We are all able to fall quickly and easily. So please do not think that that's what I'm saying. It isn't like those bad Christians or those people who failed the Lord and then there's us. No. I'm just giving you a heads up, is that you are dealing with false brethren. It really is. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? And then, which brings me to Romans 12, right? Verse 14, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, as far as depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Okay, I do feel impressed to, like, share a story, and, like, hopefully this is edifying. It was a hard lesson, so just, like, full disclosure, this was a very painful lesson, but I do think it also was an opportunity to see God's providence and sovereignty in it, even though I didn't see it at the time. So during COVID, I was actually working in a space with a lot of people who were not involved in social work, but because of the need, a lot of people were deployed to help us. So I found myself surrounded by a lot of people who did not have similar education, did not have similar background, and they were actually most of the time a fair bit younger and actually quite immature sometimes in how they handled things. And what happened very quickly turned into kind of this like a bit of tension between those of us who had experience and those people who were deployed. And there was significantly more of them than us. And so as this tension increased, I found myself on my shift fairly at odds with a few of the girls, which I think from what I understand, maybe was a bit racial as well. But at the end of the day, there was this tension that continued brewing through the shifts. And the only time that they seemed to kind of provide space or kind of leave me alone more or less was when there was like clients involved or maybe supervisors involved. Other than that, it was like they were intentionally trying to make the environment very hostile, like even to the point where they would make accusations, like they accused me of like gonna steal things from them, like things that were like not even remotely plausible or that were realistic in the situation that they were talking about. So there was a lot of like, it was a very spiritual kind of time, I would say, in terms of some of the things that I saw. Anyways, long story short, this went on for months. And the Lord just kept prompting me to just don't engage, disengage from it, disengage. Like if they come and they're trying to start an issue, just walk away. Don't engage with them. Don't fight with them. And over again, he had to train me like, do not engage with this. Do not try to just fix it in the flesh. Just leave it because that is not how it's going to be resolved. Now, after a period of time, I was actually pulled back to my original, to a different location. And at the end of the day, I actually ended up getting a promotion. And this promotion sent me back to the very same location that all of this happened. And so when I walked in and I was like considered like the person in charge for public health, like that's kind of the level of promotion the Lord gave me in there. So I'm walking in, I'm representing public health, and I'm the person in charge on shift. And I'm walking into this site and I see the same people. And I got to introduce myself in this new position. And let me just say that in that whole time, there was no expectation on my end as to how the Lord was going to resolve this or do anything with it. I really didn't know. And at times it felt unfair because it was like, no matter how much I tried to disengage from them, it was like they were consistently pursuing conflict with me all the time. So I would stay away and they would come. And then this moment, I'm telling you, there was nothing sweeter. There was absolutely nothing sweeter. And Psalm 23 has a very different flavor for me now, because when I think of Psalm 23 and I think about he sets a table for me in the presence of my enemies, I can tell you wholeheartedly that I've seen it. And I've sat at that table and I've eaten. And I'm telling you, it is very sweet than lifting your hand and trying to engage or fight with people, going back and forth. It is good when the Lord redeems the situation. It is good when he shows you, hey, this was not in vain. And in fact, there was something positive that came out of it after all of that too. And there was nothing like the look on their face that day. And you know what? I was very tempted to want to act in the flesh in that moment. And the Lord was like, don't rejoice. This is like, this is your, yes, I've elevated you, but keep your heart humble before me. And he still gave me an opportunity to engage with them before I went to like our new office. So it was something, I'm telling you, it was full circle. And I'm so grateful for that moment. So I just want you to know that sometimes maybe the Lord doesn't redeem it in the way that you think he's going to redeem it. It doesn't appear to happen in that moment. And that can kind of feel unfair, but just give it time. Trust me, give it time. Galatians 6, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will reap. If you sow to the flesh, you will reap corruption. But if you sow to the Spirit, you will reap everlasting life. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day, night, wherever you are. Bye.